Grace, mercy, and peace are yours from God our Father and from our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. Brothers and sisters, beloved by our Lord Jesus, love is wanting what is best and then doing what is best for someone, no matter what the cost. That's a pretty good summary of what the Bible is talking about most of the time when it talks about love. And where do you see that kind of love most often? Two people who are young and in love, marriages that have endured for decades, connection between parents and children, people and their pets. There are a lot of relationships where we could find something that we would call love, and yet many of the things that we would go about calling love don't really have anything to do with what the Bible is talking about, right? I mean, your feelings toward chocolate or a particular sports franchise have nothing to do with this kind of love. But what does that have to do? What do those things have to do with wanting and doing what is best? And it certainly doesn't really bring into the whole question of disregarding the cost. But this lesson today speaks to us more about love, especially love for God and even more so love for your neighbor, other people. And Jesus goes on to tell an incredible story about love in action, which has us hanging on just about every single word that he says. But what really gets us is when he says, if this is what true love really looks like, go and do likewise. Now, how are we to take those words? Are they to be the Christian's marching orders for everyday life? Should they cause us to tremble in despair? Do they even still apply to you and me today? Does our eternity depend upon them? Or are they something that we can disregard altogether? Well, this is something that we must explore further. This parable is a very familiar story, but it's really only part of the account. To understand the point of Jesus' parable, we really have to ask ourselves, why is it that Jesus was telling the parable? A man stood up to test him. He was an expert in the law of Moses, and he was really hoping to trap Jesus by finding out that Jesus was not really teaching what the law said. And so he says, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And when he's saying this, what he is really saying is, what is that one thing that I have to do to know for sure that I have earned heaven? And will I know it when I've done it? But Jesus, in his answer, points him right back to that law of Moses. The man sums up the 10 Commandments, and really he does it beautifully. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus commended him for his answer. That was a great answer. You hit the nail right on the head. Do this, and you will live. But that wasn't enough for this man. And we hear why. He wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? He didn't just want to trap Jesus. He wanted to claim heaven for himself by his following of the law. He wants to make sure that he has all the bases covered, and he doesn't want to leave anyone out. But neighbor, that can't mean every person on the face of this earth, no matter who they are, no matter where they live, right? I mean, there are billions of people on this planet. So who does God really include in this vague idea and concept of neighbor? That gives Jesus the opportunity to tell the man a story. It says a man was walking from Jerusalem to Jericho. If you want to think about an idea of distance here, think about walking from here to Winneconne. But this was rocky desert terrain, and it was filled with hiding places for robbers and bandits. And along the way, trouble found this man. Robbers beat him, took all he had, and left him so badly injured that he was floating between life and death. Thankfully, help was on the way. By chance, by a stroke of luck or divine providence, a traveler was coming by, and not just any traveler. This was the traveler that anyone would hope to see. It was a priest, one of the best of the best. Surely he would help. But that isn't what happens, is it? The priest is coming along, and he sees that bloody mess along the side of the road. And he crosses over to the other side. And shortly after, a Levite comes along. And the Levite does the same thing. Levites weren't priests themselves, but they were workers in the temple as the law decreed that they should be, as they were members of the tribe of Levi. Now, to give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they thought that this man was already dead, and if they came into contact with a dead body, that would mean they would be ceremonially unclean, and they would not be able to carry out their duties in the temple. That is what the law said. But it's clear that they were missing something when it came to their living out that law in their lives. And then comes this Samaritan, a foreigner, an enemy even, a person who was not supposed to know anything about the law or about love. But when he sees this man on the side of the road, his heart goes out to the man. And look where it leads him. He stops his trip right then and there. We don't know where he was going or what he was doing, but that is done. And he goes to that man. And he cares for him. And he works to heal him. And he picks him up and puts him on the back of his own animal. And that means he now would have to walk. But he brings him to a place where the man could find help. And he pays for it out of his own pocket. And then he offers to pay even more of the man's expenses if there was need for it. He acts in love, no matter the cost. Jesus then asks the expert in the law, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" And there can only be one answer, right? It's the Good Samaritan. But did you notice how the man answers? He cannot even bring himself to say those words. He can't admit it. All he says is, well, the one who had mercy on him. And then Jesus encourages him, go and do likewise, because that is what love looks like. Certainly, Jesus is teaching us what love looks like here. And isn't the Good Samaritan maybe the greatest example of that? But that is not the only lesson that Jesus wants us to take away from these words. Jesus wants us to live our lives in love toward others, but he also wants us to love for the right reason. Now, why is that so hard? Well, it seemed as if that expert in the law, as well as the priest and the Levite, were very much concerned about doing things God's way. They took his commands very seriously, and yet it seems they also misunderstood those commands. They had added in their minds and in their hearts, "Go and do likewise, so you can somehow earn heaven for yourself." And so they were very concerned about having every right answer. They were very concerned about doing things so right, so correctly, that they would even add laws over and above the ones that God had given, just so that they would be sure not to come close to breaking the ones that God had set. And so this concept of neighbor, this was not a person that you would meet. It was certainly not someone that you would go and seek out. No, this was just an idea, a concept that was to be debated and then judged to see if it was correct or not. They forgot that answers and actions that are right before God can only come from a heart that is right with God. They wanted to become right with God on their own, but how was that working for them? God's standard for us is to match his own holiness and perfection. It's not good enough for us to say, well, I can see that person and say, well, at least I am better than they are. That may work for a while because, there's always someone you can find that you can say, I feel better about myself than they. But there's always going to be someone better than you. Isn't that one of the points that Jesus is making in this parable? I mean, who of any of us could be as good and as merciful as that Samaritan in every moment and every circumstance of our lives? None of us could be. And if my eternity then depends upon living a life of love like that, that's a very frightening thing, isn't it? On the other hand, some might say, well, then why bother? If I can't be perfect in my life of love, why bother? If I can't earn heaven by doing these things, why bother doing them? If my every effort and attempt in this only ends up in sin, why bother? And if Jesus is going to forgive me anyway, why should I bother trying? Why should I try to live according to his word? But such an attitude is hardly one of praise and thanks and love. And it really misses the whole point of Christian living. Christian living is not there for us to earn heaven. In fact, no matter how good our acts of love are, they are completely useless if we are going to try to earn them to buy our way into heaven. So we are right to despair of ourselves in that. God does not need our good works or our acts of love. But your neighbor certainly does. And those acts of love have infinite value and worth to your neighbors. And the Lord is very happy when he sees you put that love into action for them, because he wants to use us to show his love to other people. Jesus' description of love here in the Good Samaritan also points us back to the love that he himself had for us. Jesus' perfect love exceeds even that of the Samaritan. He finds us and we are dead in transgressions and sins, and he gives up even more than the Samaritan. God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us, no matter the cost. God gave up his one and only Son. Jesus gave up his very life for you and for me. He showed us the most perfect way of love, wanting what is best and doing what is best for us. He lived his life in the most perfect way of love. His perfect record of keeping keeping the law in love belongs to you and me through faith. And his perfect death out of love has paid for all the times where we have not loved him or our neighbors as we should. Jesus' love for us gives us freedom from sin, and then also a freedom to love our neighbor as we live our lives just in the way that he describes here. We can live a life of love for our neighbor, and we do that in gratitude for the love that Jesus has shown to us. And we are seeking to do that to his glory, not our own. And Jesus teaches us a couple of things about what that love looks like, again, here in these words about the Good Samaritan. Do you notice that for that Good Samaritan, his motivation came from the inside? It was compassion and it was love, not in any way obligation or compulsion that moved him to act in the way that he did. He looked and he saw a neighbor in need and he acted. He did not see race. He did not see nationality. He did not see any outward difference between he and that man lying there. Instead, he thought of the needs of others before himself. And it cost him time, and it cost him quite a bit of money, and it may have put him in quite a bit of danger as he's spending time there along that road filled with bandits and robbers to help this man. But following the love of the Lord makes him bold to act, as he trusts that the Lord will protect him in what he is doing, and he trusts that God will not allow him to suffer any real loss or harm as he seeks to pour out that love to others. And really it comes down to this. I don't ask myself in these situations, well, who exactly is my neighbor that I am absolutely obligated to help? No. Rather, I ask instead, Jesus, who are you giving me an opportunity to be a neighbor to next? So then the Lord can show his love to one more person. And he chooses to do that through you and me. Today we have the opportunity to install 2 new teachers for our school. As you think about that, in the calling that you've received, you get that opportunity to share every day that message of Jesus' love and to model that love that Jesus has shown you in your lives to the little ones in your care. And we as a congregation have the opportunity to show the love of Jesus to those that we've called to serve. Again, what an amazing privilege that Jesus chooses to use us to show his love to others. Christ's followers love their neighbors. Jesus wants us to live in love, but he wants us to love for the right reason. Understand as you do that, you are not doing that to earn heaven. You do not have to justify yourself before God. Jesus has already done that for you. But look at the great example of putting God's love into action that you see in this Good Samaritan. And now go and do likewise. Because this is what love looks like. Amen.